shores and woodlands of the north, it's history of copper mines and iron ore, the Great Lakes fishery. To the farmlands of the southern counties we'll look around, my friend, at all that waits the sportsman in the state of Michigan. And sometimes when the moon brings out the diamonds in the snow, and the stillness of the forest lies encased in Arctic cold, the wind might whisper through the trees, listen if you can. It tells you of the beauty in the state of Michigan.
Hi there, come on in. Spend the next half hour with us because we're going to talk fishing. The kind of fishing where you catch lots of fish. We're looking at quantity here, fish you can eat, starting off with perch fishing off South Haven on the Captain Nichols party boat. Oh, I'll tell you, it doesn't get any more comfortable than this. Then we'll continue our series on sensitive float fishing with Craig Schaff, a technique that applies to all kinds of fishing, but is especially good with panfish. Kathy Beitler fixes some stir-fry fillets. They taste great, so you stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, time for Michigan Outdoors. It was a hot Saturday afternoon when we boarded the Captain Nichols party boat at South Haven, a 70-foot fishing boat that easily handles 50 or 60 anglers. What made this year different was the weather, the hot weather, 80s and 90s. I asked cameraman John Ford to get a shot of some waves. Well, and there they were, waving away. You can tell by the way they were dressed that it was a hot day. The waves on Lake Michigan weren't too bad, though. In fact, it was nearly dead calm. On the boat's bridge, Donnie Nichols showed us the white marks on the LCR graph. That's a huge school of perch, so the anchor was dropped. Lots of line peeled off the deck. We were fishing deeper than we ever had before. I have a classic perch rig right here. This is a 1-ounce sinker at the bottom of, well, what's just called a perch rig. 2 dropper hooks, and I have a small minnow on each one. We're letting it down here. I guess it's about 50, 60 feet of water. Look at that line peel off. Now this I'm using is ultralight line, 4-pound test. I have here on the reel. This is an ultralight reel, an ultralight rod. And the reason I'm using this is because that's what the crew uses. They do, and they always seem to catch more fish than anybody. You let the sinker stay right on the bottom and put tension on the rod. You can see how I'm leaving tension on the rod. Now if I let it down a little bit, it hits the bottom there and it's slack. So I tighten up to where the sinker is still on the bottom, well, barely. It sort of bounces a little bit. But I try to keep it right at that level so I could feel a perch hitting. I don't know if that, basically what I'm going to do is watch the crew and do exactly what they do. Oh, boy, is that a nice one. The first perch boated were a nice one, some real jumbos. But Captain Don Nichols said that this fishing was strange. Usually we'd be in 20 feet of water. Are we fishing 70 feet down?
72 foot right here.
Because I knew we were peeling out a lot of line, but I didn't know it was that much. Well, we've never, in the almost 10 years we've fished with you guys, we've never fished in 70 feet of water.
Normally this time of year we should be in about 35, 40 foot, and that's in the cooler waters usually in there, but it's just been a weird year.
So we have all these, westerly winds blowing the warm surface water in? And
the southwest and the hot temperatures. We haven't had any, not a lot of rain and not a lot of cool weather. It's just a real hot lake.
But the fish that we brought in today, I mean, they're not dinky ones at all. I mean, these are jumbo. Some of them are the size of walleye.
There's some nice sized fish. It was the same thing this morning. Been real nice sized fish, just not a lot of them.
Are people happier if they catch 10 or 15 or 20 small ones or a couple big ones?
Oh, I think they're happy with the nice ones. A lot of people don't get fish that size where they live or anything, so when they come out here and get a couple jumbos, they're real happy with them.
This young lady right here who caught that double is Lois Buren. If you call the Outdoors Club this summer, it's likely that she'll be the one who answers. She's quite an angler, too, and so is Harold. Harold Schofield from Mason surprised everyone with his catch, about a 10-pound steelhead. How's it feel?
Not a big one, but
A lot bigger than the perch.
well, I haven't got a perch yet.
Oh, you haven't? Well, you're going to be all set with this.
It's got to be bigger, Fred.
Very gentle. You're really fighting that well. You must have caught a few steelhead before.
Not on this tackle.
Nice job, bro.
Yeah, it's your eye. Here we go. And we got him aboard. How about that? Whoa! Captain Donnie Nichols takes Harold Steelhead out of the net. Now, this is an unusual catch for a perch party boat. They never used to catch anything but perch on these little hooks fished right on the bottom with a minnow. But since the planting of the Skamania strain of steelhead, the ones that make a summer spawning run, a half dozen lucky anglers on the Captain Nichols have caught steelhead so far this year. In fact, one was caught on Donnie's boat on the morning run. So this makes 2 steelhead on this boat caught by perch fishermen today. Harold didn't think that 10-pounder would fit into his perch bucket, so Donnie Nichols iced it down in the cooler. And I asked Donnie if steelhead were showing up on the graph. Do you ever see any Skamania or salmon?
We marked some, the first stop we stopped today, we quite a few big fish down there. I thought we'd get one there, but I didn't see any when we sat down here, but apparently there's a couple down there.
Right here we have it. Yes, here we go.
There you are.
Look at that. Boy, that's a kind of a dark
15
one.
feet below the surface.
No kidding?
Yeah. You can see them down there.
Oh, so you changed your tactic when you saw him down there, huh?
Yeah.
Bring it up real slow.
Came up a little bit. That's where they're at.
Okay, okay. I've got the technique now. I'm going to join you. I'm going to join you at 15 feet.
Seems to be working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, they're running nice too. Lake Michigan perch. Coming back.
That's the third one in just 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, nice fish. Nice.
Kathy got one down. How far were you down?
15 feet, just like you
15
said.
feet down.
Just like you said. It's working.
What we're experiencing here is a quirk of water and wind, causing a thermocline, which is a band of water that's a different temperature, one that perch evidently prefer, which has pulled them off the bottom to suspend in a higher, more comfortable strata of water. You don't see this very often.
Come on, Thomas, you're getting behind.
I know. I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to move over.
What is the deal? Oh, hey, use that one for bait. That's a nice one, Garrett.
The man who made this accidental discovery of the suspended perch was Ron Gardner from Walker. He saw those suspended perch almost out of sight 15 feet down. It started a real bonanza. This is incredible. Look at everybody's hooking up now. We're fishing at 15 feet. So we've been sitting here for a couple hours fishing on the bottom, and the fish are right into the boat.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have known it unless they followed them up there.
that one up.
Yeah. When perch fishing is really hot, you can hook 2 at once easily. But it wasn't red hot today, but several double headers were caught, and they were dandy perch.
Mine's not hooked good.
Back, take her right out.
Look at that.
Whoa! Yeah!
Yeah.
All right! In just a second, I want you to meet Tricia Howland. She's our administrative assistant at the Outdoors Club. She handles membership records, and today she just started handling fish. That's good. All right. How many times have you been fishing?
This is my first fishing trip.
And your first fish?
My first fish. Yuck.
Oh, what do you mean yuck?
Yuck.
New experiences for many of the anglers who joined us 2 weeks ago off South Haven. For $25, you can use the boat, then leave it behind. The crew will scale and fillet your perch for 10 cents each. That's another bargain if you've prepared many perch. And Harold Schofield got a real thrill catching a jumping steelhead on his perch fishing rig. This is our 8th summer in a row on the Captain Nichols, and despite my luck, I wouldn't miss it for anything. We're booked again for the Captain Nichols on July 18th. Looking forward to it. You know, the port of South Haven is noted for its perch and its salmon and its lake trout in the summer. But where do the really big lake trout come from? Well, I did an analysis of our trophy book data in the current issue of the Outdoor Digest magazine. And as far as average weight of lake trout go, Lake Superior has it. Keweenaw County is at the top of the heap. That's the waters off Isle Royal. Average weight was a hair over 25 pounds. Van Buren County came in second, but that's only based on 7 entries. Marquette has had 29 entries, and Alger County reported 116 Lakers over 20 pounds in the last 8 years. But you know, the port of Manistee accounts for more salmon and lake trout entries than any other port in Michigan. They also account for some big lake trout. This one was taken in Lake Michigan off Manistee. The mount was done by taxidermist Tom Wolfe, a masterful mount. It's in our museum right now, courtesy of Captain Emil, who tells us about it in the trophy book.
Okay, the lake trout was 23.5 pounds. That was caught in August off of Manistee.
And you catch a lot of lake trout off of Manistee, don't you?
Yes, a lot of lake trout.
Is that the biggest one you've ever seen?
No, I've seen one bigger than that.
No kidding.
Yes.
Have they gotten bigger in recent years?
Yeah, there's some old onkers out there, yes.
Now, does a laker that big fight that much?
Yes, they fight altogether different than what a smaller laker would. Yeah, they'll hold on the bottom on you and they'll shake their head, and they're quite a fish to catch when they're that size.
This realistic mount of a trophy lake trout chasing a smelt is on display at our museum. And here's a trophy laker that was caught on a jig off Isle Royal. That's where the big ones come from. It was caught on July 6th, 37 inches long, weighed a little over 20 pounds. For sending us such a great picture, we'll make Michael Hawes our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Lake Trout Angler of the Week. Aquarium surface here is the surface of a lake, and here we come with our big old bobber like we've done for years, and scare the fish underneath. Oh, they oftentimes come back, the smaller ones come back. But there's a new system that we talked about last week that we can use with sensitive floats. Now watch this, I'm going to lower down this little maggot on with a little hook. Oh, virtually no splash at all. Can sneak in on the fish. Here's a different style of the sensitive float, which also sneaks into the water. These floats are very sensitive. If a fish sucks in that little maggot, which they often do, you see the float on the top move. Just any movement down there will cause the float to jiggle, and that's when you set the hook. This is the sensitive float type of fishing. We showed you last week, Craig Schaff showed you how to hook these maggots or larvae through that little flap of skin, because the fish will suck in the whole larva and it won't tug it away like it does with worms, so you can catch fish over and over again. But Craig, a lot of people have questions about the style of float.
The float design.
The float design, you have all kinds of floats here, and these are all European, basically European inspired styles. For example, these big honkers here, what are they for?
Well, if you're fishing a big minnow, let's say you're going to fish a dead bait for a pike, like a 10 or 12 inch sucker, you could use this, but yet when the pike pulls the bait under, there's no restriction, like on a large bobber. So he won't feel that. Just like when you're bluegill fishing, you don't want that bluegill to feel the restriction of the float. It's very important that the pike doesn't feel that also.
Now you set these with the weights. These are very lightweight, so a little bit of weight balances them out. And actually, this is just above the water.
Well,
correct?
this will take about I think 1 1/4 an egg sinker, about 1 1/4 ounce. Okay, when you set this, the more of any float that you get under the water, the more sensitive it'll be, because you'll be creating almost neutral buoyancy. That's the key to it.
Neutral buoyancy.
Sensitivity.
That's sensitive. This is called the sensitive float system. There are all kinds of floats that you have here, Craig. Well, look at this one. This thing is probably 14 inches long.
About 13.
13 inches long, and when it sets in the water and it's balanced properly, now this one I'll have to push down, but it doesn't set like that where you'd think it would. It sits all the way down, so only the tip is out the top, right?
Exactly. That float is made for windy conditions. And let me show you why these floats are made for different conditions.
Well, hold it. Let's just talk a second about the wind.
Okay.
You know, we have this old Dayton float here. I'm going to set these floats up in a row, and oftentimes in windy conditions you have problems. We'll make a little race out of here. Now, these floats are primarily below the surface of the water. This Dayton float has a lot of buoyancy above. Now watch when I blow on the surface of the water. It's that Dayton float that moves. This float has quite a bit of a stem proportionally out of the water, but this one just has the tip. The wind just doesn't move it. That's the sensitivity of the float is geared to the fish underneath the water, not what's going on top.
Well, even more importantly though, Fred, if you look at this float right here and we'll stick that in the water there.
Okay. Boy, this has several split shots on it, but the classic type of rig with a small hook. Let's drop it in here. Oh,
Now, on that
Look at
float, the center of gravity in that float is at the bottom, okay? That's where the stability is at. If you hit that float on the top, go ahead and hit it on the top.
on the top?
Yeah. It'll always kick back into the same spot.
Oh,
If you hit one of the other floats, what they'll do is they'll move. They'll allow you to drift away.
And it
so
will
in
float
a
underneath.
windy condition, that bodied waggler would be the most stable.
But now watch what happens down here when a fish might pull it from the bottom.
Exactly.
Look at the top wiggle.
The fish can affect it, but the wind won't.
Look at the top move. Because this center of gravity, the balance point, is really a foot under the water. That is amazing. That's how these floats let you know what's going on under the surface. So you have a big float like that with the center of gravity underneath the surface, and you see the value. This is for windy conditions. What are those three that you have here?
Well,
What's the difference between these?
Whenever you choose a float, you're choosing it according to its center of gravity. If I took these right here and showed you the different center of gravities, and this long-bodied waggler, which we just showed in the tank, the center of gravity is down here. Any pressure from above won't affect it because this will stabilize it. But if I put this in a river, if I was river fishing, it would get sucked under because the pressure is from below.
The current would move this
Exactly, it
float.
would force it downstream.
Okay.
The fastest current in a river is in the middle section. The slowest is on the top and the bottom. You want your bait to be natural in the lower speed, and you want your float to drift with a top speed. Okay, your average steelheader uses a bobber similar to this right here.
Yeah, this is the American pencil type of bobber.
They take the spring off and put a surgical tubing sleeve on it. The disadvantages that this has, if your line is under the water when you're fishing in a river, that line is being forced downstream. With a style of float like this, the line runs through these sleeves down through the side of the float up the top. So if you have to mend your line to control drag, you can do that, and you won't have the line dragging in the fast current.
Okay, so this is for a river.
Exactly. That would be for quite turbulent water.
For turbulent water, so the current isn't moving
Exactly.
your float. So the thing is, you want to pick the type of float you're going to use depending on the conditions. For example, if it's really windy, you want the center of gravity below the water so it doesn't move it. You wouldn't use this in a river though. You would use something like this one, where it floats on the surface, but the current isn't going to affect it. Just say you're casting in a calm area where it's real quiet and the bluegill aren't too far down. Well, then you'd go to a real lightweight float and drop it in on them where they'd hardly notice it. If you're using dead bait, a large type of bait, use something like this that it'll counterbalance the bait and the weight and still be very sensitive. But let's see what else we have, Craig. You know, we're talking bait, live bait fishing. You've told me, and I've never done it before, haven't done it yet, but we will, that you can use these for walleye and jigging?
Exactly. If, let's say you're fishing, let's say over a real rocky structure, okay, and you don't want to get down on those rocks with your jig and snag up.
Yeah.
All you've got to do is just take your, see how quickly that slips? Cast that out over your spot, select your depth, and all you've got to do is just jig that back to you.
You're kidding me.
So, no, it works
is-
wonderful.
look
For
at this.
bass, walleye.
Let's drop this in the tank. For a jig, you use a sensitive float, drop it on top, and your line, of course, is hooked to your reel.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can jig it.
See how quickly that slips.
Yeah,
now,
it's
if the walleye lift bites so much, if that walleye takes that jig and lifts up on it, that float will shoot out of the water just like you have it there.
That is great, but that will keep your jig from bumping the bottom and getting caught in the
Exactly.
rocks. And hopefully, if you have it figured right, we're going to show you next week how to set the depth. Look at this little gizmo right here. This is something that you haven't seen, that I haven't seen in the stores. This is something you can use to set the depth for this sensitive float fishing. Craig Schaff will be back next week. We'll dig into the details of some of the accessories.
Yeah.
This is exciting.
This week's recipe is unusual for bluegill. It's called bluegill stir fry. And most of the time, when you think bluegill, you think fried food.
Looked like that had a piece of squid laying across it.
It does. And this is just ginger root and onion in a wok. And then there's the bluegills. Now, we got these from Ron Reed, and they are excellent.
They're Houghton Lake bluegills,
Yes.
probably last ice bluegills.
Yep. And you want to cut those into bite-sized pieces, and then those will go into the wok too. And you don't want to overcook them. Just kind of let them hit the pan and stir them around and keep them moving. And then you're going to remove those because you need the wok to cook the rest of the ingredients. You got purple cabbage and yellow peppers, and just cut
Yellow
into
peppers.
strips.
Those
Yep.
babies are expensive. Kat.
They are, but you only use one, and it said to use them. And I think that there's really no difference in taste, just color.
Just give, yeah, as long as you got purple in here, you might as well.
Right, add something different.
Yeah.
And then after that steamed, you're going to go ahead and add the bluegill back in. Then you want to make a glaze, and this is just soy sauce, cornstarch, and a little bit of oil and some water. It'll kind of thicken it and then glaze it too.
And now for the taste.
Usually, you'd back away from something on your plate that was purple. Matter of fact, I can only think of two things, this cabbage and maybe grapes. But this is very, very good.
Oh, it's excellent.
It even turns that bluegill in there a little purple, but
It does, yeah, it's purple
It picks up the
bluegill.
color.
purple bluegill, yep. But it's very good, nice and tasty.
And if you don't put any soy sauce or Tabasco or any of these little flavorings on it, very mild. You know, and flavorful. That cabbage flavor is great with the rice.
I think just a little bit of soy sauce really adds to it.
Was the purple cabbage taste any different than the green cabbage?
It's just a little bit milder even than green.
Really? Boy, this is great stuff.
When was the
very
last
good.
time you ate the bluegill and cabbage together?
I would never think of it. Would never think of it, but it's just terrific. An unusual recipe, but oh, so good. Get outdoors as soon as you can. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
Sink very, very slowly. And if you have a heavy hook or a heavy shot above that, it'll take it in much quicker and it's going to spook the fish.
Next week on Michigan Outdoors, we'll bring you part 3 of Craig Scoff's Lessons in Sensitive Float Fishing, the final episode on this new equipment and how it works. And we'll delve into the world of turkey hunting, how hunters are getting ready for this special spring season, and why it's so interesting and exciting for turkey hunters. We have a recipe for hot wild turkey salad. It's outstanding, so join me next week right here on Public TV.